Oh no, it's dangerous. Recording has started and Sam arrived.
Ah, cool.
So now we are going into the official mode. Welcome. I think Sam told me he will do the recording, but he will only listen and come later. And there is Anna already. Hi, Anna. I had been hoping that Doug will moderate or at least jump in when I talk too much. But let me just say what I mentioned before. I'm here with Jörg Altekruse. He's my brother in co-creation, and we are doing various events at this climate negotiations. So the first started on Monday Monday last week with the Archbishop of Luxembourg, Archduke of Luxembourg. That's something like a president, and they had only 8 or 10 presidents at the opening, and only tomorrow all these big potatoes come in with their planes and speaking about spoiling the air. And Greta is there.
Right,
Greta.
right.
And so you see, I'm here. You can see that.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm Fridays for Future and Science for Future and Parents for Future and Filmmakers for Future. And we did together with Paul, who flew yesterday or today to Delhi, back to India. We did the first 3 weeks together, and Paul was also with us doing all these videos for the Fuel for Futures event around the Entrepreneurship Summit 3 weeks before. So this is humanity, human rights, and this is a sign of the SDGs. And all my suits and everything, I got lost yesterday. And 2 lockers I couldn't get into. So we really had a nightmare. But the second head of the delegation was locked. She went through the door and couldn't back in because it's all high security. I tell you, this is a mess.
So lots of one-way doors.
Fun?
So your blocks are lots of one-way doors.
I was blocked.
Locker doors, venue doors.
Well, we overcame the barriers and blocks, and I think we all are also blocked. And that is how to unblock our focusing on one box, one ego, one filter, one optics, and how to overcome that in a futuristic viewpoint of integration systems and models. That is my topic on the Resilience Lab booth. I think I told you earlier, Doug.
Yeah.
I will be presenting tomorrow.
So what's your answer?
Oh, yes. And Colin.
So what's your unblock?
Hi, guys.
What's your unblock? In your presentation tomorrow, what's your answer?
Well, we have to do it multimodal. You know, all my work, we do it by sharing voices, spaces, and futures, and not get lost just in systems or just in patterns or just in frames, but really be open and use the power of naive questioning of the use. That's why we do Use for Planet.
That's perfect. So I have a naive question for you.
Okay.
My naive question is the whole conceptual frame of the SDGs, of chopping everything up into these little boxes and categorizing and sorting them in bins, helpful to the problem at hand?
This is a well-packed, good question, Doug.
That's a
You know,
naive, it's a naive question, but it just strikes me as more of the same. Like, if you
you,
want to solve things in a new way, the last thing in the world you need to do is start putting shit in boxes.
you see, I was about 7 years ago with these guys who did it overnight, two journalists, advisor, and they could agree that the nations overnight accepted it, and it looked very appealing. I wrote then this article in Global Commons Alliance with an UN ECOSOC that we have to link the boxes and look into the blind spots and really go to win-win deep drive leverage points, like Donella Meadows said. And all these questions we have to face by very vicious, by very naive, and very trained, tough media. So it is really the broadest range of participants we can expect. We had already last week lots of satellite and side events with 500,000 people in the streets. So it's also demonstration, and it's about finding common language and common glossary and well, all my work on commons, you know it.
I agree. Heiner,
So the number
I want to take 1 minute because I'd like to give people a chance just to share their voice and check in, and then we can pick right back up with where we're leaving off. How does that sound to you? Okay. Check-ins. Jazz, you're peculiarly Twilight Zone. Is that by design or? Oh, I think he's going to go turn on a light. You guys want to check in? Alex, Anna, Colin?
This latitude,
say hi.
at
Nothing
this
special.
latitude, it goes dark at about 4 p.m. and it's just 7 minutes past 4. So one must remember to turn the lights on. And it's raining because it's England. This is the storm Akazil that was somewhere in the States 10, 12 days ago. How come we always get spent weather and not fresh stuff? Otherwise, everything is good. The baby's birthday party went down very well. There's loads of food left. Half a cake. It was a huge cake. It's still huge and it's in the fridge, blocking the fridge. I'm complete.
Alex?
Yeah, I had a girlfriend in 1970, 75, 70. She came from Cleethorpes, a town near Cleethorpes called Grimsby. I think that's on the English northeast coast. Anyway, I had a blocking, had an unblocking, and it's a situation that's resolved itself. But there's still lots of things that come up for other people. So I'm here. I'm online, and I'm looking for solutions. Over.
Okay.
May I ask you all to speak loud and clear? We are in a car driving towards Madrid, and there's lots of driving noise.
No problem. Heiner, is there a circulation channel of yours that you would like the link to this broadcast to that might pick up what we're doing here and want to join, given the fact that we're going to be giving you some room and some platform and opportunity to to unblock and unload before tomorrow. You're muted.
I think I can answer for Jörg because it's difficult for him to hit the right junctions. Yes, we have all this. It is used for Planet. It is various channels, and we do for futures and. We have created here some QR codes to really do it all paperless, and all.
Which is surprising all the people.
Yes, surprising, even those advanced people.
Yeah.
Well, feel free to ping any and all of them to join us now here, if you want to send out the link.
I will add the link in a moment in the chat space.
Okay.
I wanted to respond.
Yeah, like this, yeah.
Yeah, you can hear it now. You better drive.
Yeah.
No, you better drive. So what I wanted to say, regarding your questions, the SDGs are just numerical, only in one box. And that is a big problem. And so you cannot really make projects which are win-win-win and go to the deep drivers, and anyway, not. And I'm the play jockey.
No.
Anyone can screen later the video, and then QR. He's right.
Okay.
But I want him to drive and not crash into the neighborhood.
I agree.
I'm driving.
He is multimodal. So we have a very interesting booth there from India. It's 150 years, a great soul, Mahatma Gandhi. And the Indians have been doing an outstanding job there. But more important is which delegations didn't show up, what are the hidden draws in the closed sessions where they do the bracketing and where they all next week try to negotiate a common agreed accord. And the head of the General Assembly in New York already, while driving in, wrote that he would like to base on the Paris Accord. But this is getting too technical now.
So, what are your blocks heading into your presentation tomorrow?
I can only laugh. We were only dreaming over it a little. I didn't prepare anything. And it will be the challenge for me the moment we have finished this session to discuss it with Jörg. The blocks are not to overwhelm the people, to address the participants who are there, not to talk over their heads, but really, how do you say, crafting a visionary, futuristic approach. Because we have done last year in Madrid this 30 visions with Harry painting me as this multimodal deep sea fish. And there are all these people in their turns and in their turfs fighting for their associations, their government, their industry, their union. So it is really a big market, but a market in the sense of, like the head of the White House said, we as nations always play like boys and kick each other in the ass. We always do like that. Why not screw another head of state? We are the bigger state. So what's actually on in these negotiations and bracketing is to find the lowest common denominator. No, actually, we should really urge for a higher denominator, but that is a danger, that we dissipate into bullshit and nothingness.
Alex?
So what you really want to say is you bring together the experience of previous COPs, of 25 or 24 previous COPs, to understand how, where the options are to open up for a different understanding and for a different type of communication. And I think that's the chance, and I was especially asked to provoke with some ideas to make very clear that there are other options to accelerate the communication and not stick to what's been happening like a ritual over the last decades.
Well, we know this dialogues between two parties fighting and screwing each other. So you see, this all has to do with our dialogue methods, our structured dialogic design to have more than the lowest common denominator, and use for the Talanoa process not only what the Maori and Indians have been doing in the past, but to bring it on the next level of video community gatherings. You see, I cannot answer all the questions, but that's why I have a speaker, or we do a joint session, or we probably do another few more sessions during the next coming days, live, like we have been doing at various pavilions. So anyway, Colin, you grabbed me on the wrong leg. We are blocked by not having time and not having sleep, and 24/7 really burned out by moving from one apartment to the next. But having this weekend laundry day Bergfest between the two major sections of the parties gathering was really good. So we are stronger than ever.
Yeah.
He agrees.
Yeah.
Now, was that something that wasn't part of the formal structure of attending? It was just something where you decided to take a hard right turn and a detour and a break?
Well, we are not planned. So we just, how do you say, gate crashed to be at the top booth we were dreaming of. Normally we are in the press center, or we have had pre-arranged presentations, typically most of the time in Luxembourg, because Jörg started his Youth for Planet exercise 2 years ago in Luxembourg.
Yeah.
Because Luxembourg is small and it's more easy to bridge various ministries, because also these ministries are silos, and if they know each other, and it's not such a big town like London, New York, Los Angeles, Singapore, Tokyo, then it is more easy to come, because the people know each other, to common grounds and see maybe if and where an agreement, or at least we can live with it, such a nodding and signing the papers is possible. Otherwise, the people don't know each other, have their own jargon.
Understood.
There's a lot of interest there from people with interest in the fossil fuel sector.
Yes, Alex, but speak out loud, like crying loud. It is very hard to hear you. It's lots of traffic noises.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. but I can't speak any louder than I am now. And it's the interests of fossil fuel companies that get into these meetings is always apparent when they try and introduce complications, to try and introduce division and upset the simple solutions that the majority have agreed to. So if those people can find the investors coming from the renewable energy sector, they'll have some money available to fight the corruption coming from the fossil fuel sector. It's a seesaw. There's a seesaw thing going on, and the corrupt politicians on either side of the fence are involved, deeply involved, up to their eyeballs. Over.
Alex, you are spot on, even when we only heard every third word. It is a vested interest of interests and pressure groups, and they are all there.
It is about subventions for fossil fuels.
Yes.
And they want, there's one side wants to finish this, or at least allow to finish it, because at the moment all the agreements still allow to subsidize fossil fuels, which is in a huge amount of money every year. And as soon as you don't subsidize fossil fuels anymore, then suddenly solar and wind and other forms of energy will become competitive. And there is an actual example of today. In India, they are phasing out or deciding against 12.5 gigawatt of coal power because there is an alternative offer, which is about 20 to 30% cheaper by solar power. So already solar power is so competitive, brings coal out of business.
So you see, you don't have only this competition and dilemma between modes of energy generation, but also intersectorial strategic dilemma on the different phasing modes. Are we talking here about 2020 or 2030 or 2100? And talking about in different governance and policy regimes, because the government in the Fiji Island is quite different from the government in Canada, or like you see all the trouble now in Chile, where so many social interests all come together. It only came to mind that when we had the CSD 10 in New York, suddenly with all the civil society people, the nuclear industry were there. They were really jumping in. They're also here now, dramatically. So we have this takeover of special interest groups with all their, how do you say, spies and media and moderators and agents. So it's actually a political, very interesting drama or game.
Has anybody ever gotten up and sort of introduced all those people?
I didn't get you.
Has anybody ever gotten up and introduced all of those people, sort of pulled their pants down for who they are and what they represent within the larger context? I'd like to introduce and welcome blah, blah, blah from nuclear, and blah, blah, blah from coal, oil, and gas, and blah, blah, blah from this, and blah, blah, blah from... Has anybody ever gotten up and called them on their presence that nakedly?
My problem is that I cannot understand you. Maybe I take a headset, but then you cannot hear, or I give him the headset. But actually, we are still very, very exhausted we will show not only the links and the QR codes. We do it with this Paul Singh from Delhi, very professionally. And then you will get our presentation. It will be recorded, it will be filmed, it will be available, because I have another filmmaker from the university, I think UCLA from Los Angeles, and there's about hundreds of media people around. So actually it is taking lots of energy to hear you. I might want to call it a day, even when we have not finished the hour.
There's a handheld. Does that sound louder? There's a translator you can get, like a smartphone. The person's speaking in one language, the smartphone's translating the language in real time, so you can read it in your own language.
Heiner, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Sam, you're very low.
Oh, it's Colin.
Oh, was that Colin?
Yeah.
No, I thought it was Sam.
Yeah, it was Sam. And
Oh,
I was just
okay.
checking. Heiner, can you hear me? Testing.
Yeah,
I
your voice is very low and in the back, Sam.
Okay, never mind.
This is the dilemma of life, and from that I need to be unblocked. By the way, Colin, as you didn't speak up yet, our Paul from India was the first going to Michigan, being in Detroit, and he was an advanced, I think, automotive designer, diesel engine, whatever, engineer. And then he became an international consultant, and now he's with us, spreading the work of supporting, giving youth a voice, and giving parents a voice, and giving indigenous a voice. And actually what Jörg did was inviting the indigenous in Chile, because from Chile, because it's a joint film production, and as this is also a joint COP, it was supposed to be in Chile, and now only 1 month's preparation time, then moved it all to Madrid due to the unrest in Chile. We had a large delegation from the indigenous Atacama, where it goes on rare minerals and rights. All these issues are there on the table. Water. And water and all this. And so he got a second joint event with the Archduke of Luxembourg and the indigenous. And he was so thrilled, and all this in the media. We were really lucky and not so much unblocked.
yeah,
So you see, I'm just still very tired and actually should sleep and
Okay.
prepare my
Yeah.
talk.
It sounds really good, and I really can relate to your cross-modal approach. The SDGs are definitely boxed out, so a way that people can see them at their base component level, but in reality, these things cross-pollinate, or you could say are related, some of them. Especially one example is bringing equality and economic prosperity. I think a lot of that's related to women's rights and things in some countries. I don't want to pick on countries that aren't my own, but I think that's a really good example. And child mortality and different indicators have been used in the past to show when a society is becoming more healthy, you could say. So, you know, I think looking at the SDGs in that kind of a way where the boxes are just the pieces of Lego that you can snap 2 or 3 together and say, okay, well, these things are all related to this problem. And then maybe you could get people, you know, more aware of that aspect that Doug said that seemed very, you know, as a naive question, seems a very bad way to present these things. And I think it's just, one view, you know, one context at a base understanding level to say, you know, come on board with these things. And maybe if you take these, you know, if your interest is this, let's look at the choice of things and which one are, you know, related to your issue. Because I don't think it is just a one box thing. Anyway, thank you.
Actually, when I just could say something about that, the SDGs are a good, or have proven to be a good common talking ground, a base to start a conversation. So, for example, with the indigenous people coming from the Atacama, they were talking not about only the metals and the metal resources that are needed to build batteries for our electric cars and our electric devices, but they were talking about the water situation, because to extract the mineral, we need a lot of water. So, and this is in one of the driest deserts on this planet, a problem for people to survive there. So they already bring it up. And then, of course, this is a heavy load on bringing up children in this context. So then the heavy load is really on the women, and they have a kind of common association of villages, 18 villages, are in constant dialogue about their situation, and they have selected some speakers that actually came to COP. They were sent to COP by the villages to talk about their issues, and they were mainly women, actually, interestingly. But, so they came together with other indigenous people and read out a kind of manifesto of the indigenous tribes of Chile and other countries, of finding a common ground of justice in terms of mineral and resource extraction.
Yes, you see, many groups are marginalized. Every living thing which cannot put his voice on the table, not only just women and children and indigenous, all living nature who cannot say its price, is lost in such negotiations where it's all about certain people's terms, creating sometimes disruptive, invented turns. And so we have to look into the turns and what wavelength they have. Is this a short-term change, or is it an epochal change? Is it happening by surprise, or some people planning or scheming? But these are really tough questions.
Is anyone asking those questions?
These are the issues faced by villages with battery and water are all about to be solved by the new technology that's come from graphene production. Widespread mass production of graphene is now cheaper. They've found new ways to develop it, and it's a superconductor. It's going to build us fantastic batteries that last for weeks and months and keep your car going for thousands of miles. And the membranes, they use graphene to make membranes and separate fresh water from salt water. So these will be cheaply available now to villages everywhere. But that's the problem, because we're improving health, we're improving production on agriculture, increasing the yield, increasing the food supply and the population, and that's all putting pressure on the environment. That's all. Every person's a heat engine. Every person, living person, is a tiny heat engine. So think about that. It's not, the problem we have to solve is not population, it is global warming. We have to block the sun somehow. Otherwise we go over 2 degrees and that'll tip, that's the tipping point. You know, they say 1.5 was the tipping point. And we haven't got enough time to do that. So there's going to need to be some serious changes. And part of that solution will be the carbon fibre, the new batteries, and the desalination plants that are solar powered. This is going to turn the deserts into forests. Over.
So these are all the topics being raised here. And all these people have their technological ideas, they have their vested interests. There are the missionaries, the blue-eyed visionaries. And so anyway, it is such a diverse thing that we really are about to lose our voice, and we are soon hitting here the airport. I was adding some names to the platform, and maybe also adding that the 30 visions of sustainability, what we did before the last COP, when you have seen me in Poland, they now have been producing a little, but still only in Spanish. And my mission is also to really and all these sectors, and these dilemmas are really tough and obvious, but we might come back at the end of the COP next Saturday or Sunday. Jörg is flying out on Sunday next week and me on Saturday. On Tuesday, and we have all these foundations coming, which we're funding also the GCC initiative through the standard, which Sam and Tammy did maybe 1.5, 2 years ago. So it's a lot of, and Anna, but it's very, very hard to hear you. I hope I'm coming out fine.
Anna? Welcome, Gabrielle.
Verstehe ich wieder nichts. Mhm. Hello.
Hello. Welcome.
Welcome.
Where do you hail from?
I am calling from Munich. My name is Gabrielle.
Welcome,
Okay.
welcome.
Thank you. I am very short-term connected and don't know exactly what the meeting is about, but I'm very curious to know you all and to know what it is about.
Unblocking.
I'm just taking a pen.
To put it simply, unblocking, but there's a much deeper explanation, and I think Doug would be the one to explain that. Over.
Maybe. So you've landed in Global Challenges Collaboration
Okay.
Territory,
Okay.
which has historically had little to do with challenges and little to do with collaborations,
Okay.
and has evolved into really global collaborative conversations.
Okay.
And a big part of what the GCC is about is people coming together without necessarily any of the traditional old school things to rely on and hold on to, like mission statements and governance structures and decision-making rules and frameworks and superimpositions, to see whether we could evolve and learn how to communicate with each other and do that better, for want of a better way of simplifying it.
Okay.
We've managed to do that and get away with it for a little over 2 years now, without a specified goal, output, product, or intention. But there are 4 conversations each week. And Thursday is an open blank invitation for people to join and bring what they bring.
Okay.
Friday has been an off and on experimental place. Saturday has been a release valve barn raising session for the builders, the doers, and the engineers in the crowd to attempt to produce concrete and tangible things and outputs. Because it gets very frustrating for them in the undesignated, unstructured spaces. And Sunday, which is what you've landed in, is unblocking. And what it's about is when groups of people come together to communicate, to exchange, to collaborate, to do, or just to be together, people get triggered. People get reactive or have reactions. And so Sunday, at least conceptually, was set up as a place for people to bring those challenges, questions, and inquiries around how we, hello Harry, how we deal with and manage and handle and relate to those events when they happen.
Okay.
So, and the first part of the session for the last 40 minutes odd, one of our regulars, Heiner Banking, who's been at COPS 25 in Madrid and is up to his neck in all of those machinations, was sharing his challenges and some of his blocks and tales from the road around his current participation and involvement there.
Okay.
And he was in a car and just hit the airport where they have to return it, and so he's dropped out.
Okay, yes. It was Heiner who invited me to join.
Ah, terrific. Okay, well, we just lost him.
I saw that I saw him for a moment, and then I saw that he had disappeared. And I saw that he was in a car. Okay.
Yeah. And so that sort of brings you up to speed as to where we're at as of, this minute in this session.
Okay.
And I'd love to invite you to just sort of check in and talk about who you are, where you come from, if you want to do that.
Yes.
And Gertrude and Harry, you guys have landed late and not had a chance to check in, so you're also welcome and invited to do that as well. And so, but if you'd be game to share, Gabrielle, we'd certainly love to get to know you better.
Okay. Yes, thank you. Yes. So hello to everybody. I'm Gabrielle, and I am a, let's say, systems researcher and a former geologist. And then I worked over many years with a pioneer in the German ecology history, so to say, whose name is Frederick Fester. And I worked with him over 20 years. and we developed a lot of approaches like holistic system analysis, what we have been applying over 20 years also together with communities. It is also a way to communicate in a structured way and creating results at the same time. And this is where I first met Heiner many years ago, when he once met Frederick at the Club of Rome. And so this dates from the 90s, so that we met, and we met from time to time, and then we met in the systems sciences community, several big conferences and so on. And so last October, we started also a concrete project collaboration in this pre-summit in Berlin. Maybe you have heard about it. So where we have been a group of mainly 4, but a larger group then of 10 or 15 people, and creating this pre-summit event, developing the program together. It was under the topic of 4 futures. So it was, of course, also tackling climate change. And what we did is we prepared a kind of system analysis for an open group, or for several open group, about the German climate package, which the government had developed so far at that moment. And we made a kind of open system analysis in a kind of really a little bit unusual setting, and we made a lot of experiences also in this open collaboration, because so we were at once a group which really had to make a project, and it was all a kind of also a non-profit project. And so we were, it was an interesting experience also, to see how would we collaborate, and how does that develop. And let's say after Festa, who passed in 2003, I then had worked with Malik Management in St. Gallen, and Malik himself also is applying the work of another pioneer of cybernetics, which Stafford Beer. And so I get into that world of Stafford Beer also rather deep, and so experienced also a lot of syntegration, which is also that communication process. And so maybe some of you know also the work of Stafford Beer. And yes, this is Frederick Fester. He was really, he was a systems researcher, and he was a pioneer in Germany. And he was one of the first to talk about climate change, and people would really think that he was crazy, and he talked about interconnected systems, and also that at that time it was really unusual, as it was not imaginable how that interconnection could develop, which now we are observing, and in the last 10 years. And so it is still really highly interesting. And now how can people deal with that and tackle with that and master that complexity? And so it's very interesting to work together in new settings and all around the world, and see how we can contribute something to a better situation, to a future situation, which helps all of us to survive in a decent way, and to be able also to keep that kind of creative ambience, or what all we really appreciate, but which is really in danger if we have to fight against these climate changes, which are really huge, and it will cost a lot of energy to do something to make it a little bit not so hard clash. Yeah, and so this is, and we had a close contact with Heiner over the last months, especially, and he just sent me that invitation without explaining too much what it was about. I thought because it is today his birthday.
Yes, it is. It is his birthday.
So I already prepared a glass of wine. At least we can brindisi on his birthday. Okay. So yes, so thank you for listening.
Thank you much for the intro. Sam, I saw you raised your hand. Can we do check-ins with Gertrude and Harry and Amanda first before, or are you sort of riffing off Gabrielle, and it would make more sense for you to go first.
Okay.
Sam, you're not. We can't hear you.
Heiner is back again.
You're not muted, Sam, but we can't hear you. Hi, Heiner. Sam, we can't hear you.
Lauter?
Okay.
Okay, we're working our way through here. Sam will get his mic. Harry, do you want to do a quick check-in?
Yes. Gratuleren de Heiner. He's pretending to be Jörg Altenkruse. Okay.
He's with Jörg in the driver's seat. That's why.
Yeah, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just back from Amsterdam where I had a lunch with my daughter, so that was nice. So I'm just and I'm preparing for my last week here in the Netherlands, and then I'll fly to Canada for 3 months. So I'm trying to eat everything in the fridge and all the things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Not that I'm fine. I'm okay today. It's good to hear Gabrielle name Stafford Beer. That was nice. Thanks. For
Okay. Yeah. I'm even in a friendship with Alena Leonard, since some years now. I met her very often, and
awesome.
He's very interested in Festa's work, and I was very interested in Stafford's work. And they are in the same, they would have been, or they are in the same age. So they died they passed in the same year even, unfortunately. And I think it's very interesting. Yeah, and the time came now for these approaches. So in the former times, people would not understand or could not really follow what it was about.
Yeah, great, thanks. So I'm for those people who don't know me, I'm independent Dutch, Eindhoven. That's where I live, and I'm a graphic facilitator. This I think in images.
Okay, interesting.
With that, I'm in, I guess.
Thanks, Harry. Gertrude?
Erstmal herzlichen Glückwunsch, Heiner, zum Geburtstag. Schön, dich zu sehen. Hallo, Gabriele.
Hallo.
I'm from Buzek, which is near Gießen, north of Frankfurt.
Okay.
And I've gone through quite a bit the last months, and now I'm really relieved because of the solutions we found. And I'm at the moment I'm doing all my stuff of taxes, paying bills, and all this. And my profession is being trainer, consultant, coach on the topic of appreciation.
Okay.
So.
Also Wertschätzung, oder? Ist das Wertschätzung?
Ja.
Okay. Okay. Very good.
Ein Buch dazu geschrieben. Yeah. This is I'm off to Christmas. I really wrap up the year and relax and have time, and once my taxes are done.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Thank you, Gertrude. Yeah, great.
Amanda?
Hello, guys.
It's been a while. Good to see you. Would you like to check in? Where are you these days?
I'm home, so I'm in The Hague. And how much should I say? I've been meditating and had some silence also. This was the second time I went meditating since I'm back from Australia. We're still pivoting the project on a knowledge banking industry. Tim is really working hard on it. He already traveled from Canberra to Melbourne, and I don't know. So that's fine. I'm still wondering about Integral, why we still are busy with Tier 1 in the first place. And how this ranks and and status categories still are in place and why we didn't leave them. So I have some shock effects after the project I'm in. So this is quite interesting. So these are the months that I go like, wait a minute, what did I learn? And for people that I don't know here, I've been doing a couple of things. I developed from civil servant, project and program manager and consultant to sharing economy kind of collaboration specialist with digital dimensions and spiritual dimensions and ethical dimensions to it. And yeah, the latest project that I'm in is really dealing with all of those together, I would say. And I think my specialty is dealing with people that dare to bear witness and look at suffering deeply. And that's also what I assist on very deep, different levels. And so I'm good. I was hiding in the house for a week after the meditation. My mind got so clear that the tongue also was really sharp. So I kept myself inside. And all my friends came by. It was very interesting. Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to share one of Harry's pictures. It might be appropriate for what's happening. See if you can see this.
When the introduction, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, the line is here very bad, and the artificial voice just tells us we are in traffic jam and we have to be in 40 minutes at the airport and 1 hour later in the Airbnb. So I had to, how do you say, shut up Jörg. So I'm now on a headset and I have to report later, or he follows the reporting. I wanted to say, even when it's my birthday, I have some flowers for the ladies. They gave it for me from the Eastern Island, Polynesia and Tabalua, doing the Tabalua dialogues and looking into going beyond the circle of the Maori and Indaba in South Africa, or the American talking stick circle, on how to scale up and be integrative, holistic, and wondering what holistic means. Because Stafford Beer always said he really tackled holism with his system dynamics approach towards viability. And all this is part of the question we tackled already at the Four Futures, but only on the surface, but we still have work to do. So anyway, we are just listening and we are really tired.
Thank you.
Interesting, something that is sort of has sort of surfaced out of this session, which is this common theme. Amanda spoke to it in terms of the tier 1, tier 2 constructs, and Gabrielle, you spoke to it in terms of the, the systems thinking pioneers in the world of non-system thinking, fighting and elbowing their way to say, expand the frame. And the sort of intrinsic blocking on a global and cultural level to facilitate and catalyze people to break out of the cognitive boxes and frames that as a species we sort of were programmed into globally. And, you know, that unblocking is on a one-by-one basis. That unblocking is on a human, experiential, emotional, spiritual plane, because to invoke an old totem of Heiner's, you know, Gebser talked about changing beliefs, and what a Herculean task that is, and what a challenge it is for human beings to let go of what's kept them safe and familiar and comfortable, to shift and change their frame of mind. And I think that's a big, you know, Sunday Unblocking on this level, in sort of this domain, where Heiner is living, and where a lot of you spend your time, actually. And I certainly spend my time thinking there 24/7, which is how to catalyze enabling people to set themselves free, and to allow a broader understanding, a broader frame of reference, a more complex and systems-oriented awareness of, because systems-oriented has this sort of engineering, science, STEM-y, qualitative vibe to it. And the truth of the matter is that there's included in it are all of the soft, biological, mushy things like emotions and spirit and energy and connection and flows in intangible realms that are beyond our perceptual event horizon, but that we feel. And that's part of the systems reality that we're dealing with too. You know, it's like the SDGs, do the SDGs have human fear as a goal? Alleviation of human fear as a planetary phenomena. I don't see it represented.
Okay, let me jump in. As we are here and we have to pay toll, and Jörg, as it is silent, can hear us again. This is actually the real challenge, or the block, how to bring the systems together. Stafford Beer said in one of his lectures, it is not a puzzle of systems, and we need to bring the puzzle pieces together into the right frame and right location, but it's the system, an overlooking transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary, as he said, system. So actually what we did in 4 Futures in one session was looking with Gabriele and me where we are with Fester. What is the benefit of other system science schools? Like there's many systems in many different disciplines, but there are also various systems processing schools which focus either on perspective, on directions, on process, on frames. So to really integrate the systems, I think in the idea of Stafford Beer is, in my view, and that is what I'm presenting tomorrow, is to to interlink systems across scales and sectors, and use for that a ping pong, a micro meso, but also system model approach, because models, when you think them not as mathematical models, but immersive, 3-dimensional, like virtual reality models, then you can locate them and give a position to feelings, to contexts, to overlaps. So anyway, this guy inviting me, somehow his deputy, who has been here on on the directors level of the UN convention, they have really seen this need for multilingual, multidisciplinary and whatever approaches. So we are very, very lucky to not just be in the Luxembourg booth, because Jörg founded his Youth for Planet in Luxembourg to have the children under the umbrella in a positive sense of all the ministries, that we have there at least a small first embryonic step of integration within a village under a mayor, or within a country under a president. So anyway, these challenges we tackled here, and I, based on the 30 visions, what I did with Harry there with his fish. Harry, I'm trying to show you a fish the first time tomorrow. If I get enough time, I only have 15 minutes to present my 3 legs. Anyway, now the noise is coming up, but we have rain here, which is not very typical for this time here in Spain. Over.
Alex, raised your hand.
I think Sam raised his hand.
I don't think Sam is here though.
Oh, okay.
We lost him. I think he has to come back in.
Yeah, okay.
I raised my hand also.
Okay.
I was going to mention the people in the town square and a complete overhaul of the political system, because it's clearly failed, and that'll be a start. Over.
I want to address first both. We cannot alleviate fear if we don't dare to look at it, or to have it, or to acknowledge that somebody could have it, or to really look at it. And it was really funny. I was at a gong bath yesterday, and I happened to be in an emerging conversation with such a new agey healer who dared to say that I possibly had a trauma, which is actually the fact that I look at trauma. She could see it, but she thought it was wrong and I should heal it. And I don't have to heal it. It's the world's trauma that I'm looking at. So I double checked that thing. But there's a lot of misunderstanding, even in the 5th dimensional realm of healers and so on this dimension. And so I do long sessions nowadays about the pain body, the collective pain body, what is fear. And also I see that the people really looking at it are actually not embraced as the real pioneers bringing us out of it. We all mostly like to look away and to have this, shiny wholeness kind of experience, which is lovely. It should also be there, but not without acknowledging that the other part is also there. And so I miss that in the systemic approach. And then on the democratic part, our democracy could very well be working if we would use our voice. And at this current moment, there is a lot of our systems do not represent our voice anymore because they developed so rapidly next to our formal offline democratic system. So it's also a part of actually what we present as a web citizen to bring democracy on the web back and even further develop it. But if we don't look for our voice and we hand it over to some small amount of people on the world, even just by the disruption of our technology, then we should actually claim it back instead of judge it as failed. Perhaps it's an option. Geertrug, I think.
Amanda, when you said holistic, I think if you exclude some parts, then it's not holistic anymore. So if I claim a holistic part, then I need to be with what's so. not to say, okay, this I don't like. And what Heine said, I think we have to, when I see at the traffic light model, so in red or in yellow, you cannot really look at the whole thing. So you have to divide it, and you have to think about it, and you can only, or I can only have a certain amount of items to look at when I'm in the beta mode, in the beta brainwave mode. So going deep down and being in that flow and the coherence, that opens up a lot more space in which I can look at more at the same time and have more information available and digestible than in the everyday mode, in the beta mode. So that's what I was thinking. And I think that it's a misunderstanding about holistic and appreciative, or so, when we say we look only on the pink side, only on the bright side. So it's more a choice how I go about with it. So to see what's so, and then to decide how am I in the face of what's so, and not, yeah, putting pink sauce over what's not working. So, my 2 cents.
Alex?
If a practice is not 100% holistic, so it's 95% holistic, what is the other 5%? Would you call that non-holistic? I'm just wondering, Alba.
Gabrielle?
Of course, the idea of applying a holistic approach certainly includes also soft factors, like you said, as fear and traumata and so on. So I would say that approach, what we are using, also there are of course differences. So some people talk about systemic, and usually it's something which is really in the vagueness, what is happening there. And the big, let's say the big, what Fester did, that he developed a kind of methodology where you, in several steps, very structured, and of course we are facilitating these steps. And then it is about defining the question, what we are talking about. And then also what Gertraud somehow mentioned, defining also the systemic level on which we are talking. So we cannot put everything in one. So we have to decide, or what, for example, a simple question would be, well, how can a municipality now develop measures for coping with climate change in the sector of mobility or so? Then it's rather clear that we are talking about that. And of course, it depends. As if we would talk on a higher level, and there are always, especially in this small municipality, we found out that the main measure was creating awareness, for example. So at the beginning of the process, the people said, oh, we want a photovoltaic charging station for bicycles at the railway station. So this was their idea. And at the end, we finished that they had to start with creating awareness, with creating engagement of the civil society, and creating engagement of the people, at politicians at the place. So this was the circle, and we described that also as a kind of feedback circle. So creating awareness, including the population of the place, including the politicians, and then creating a circle, let's say a systemic circle, feedback circle, which can be a kind of motor for that system to develop it to a further level. So it is, and then, but at the moment, there is no awareness, and there is no engagement, and there is no activity of the politicians, and so this is a typical circle driving the system down. And this is what, let's say, also, of course, you have to be a kind of facilitator, facilitating these processes, and then helping people to bring in the soft factors and to break, also for maybe also the question of Alex, also the opposite, what would be the opposite of holistic? Also it would be kind of linear thinking or silo thinking or focusing on only one area, also excluding the reality. So in holistic should be, yes, including all the factors which are now important to solve a certain complex problem. What is the difference between Stafford Beer's work? Stafford Beer, he made models already. Also he made a kind of normative models. And you can use the VSM, and then you have, okay, I can orient myself to have an organizational structure, and I can make a diagnosis along that already normative in a certain sense. And what Fester did, he offered a methodology in a very open way to analyze whatever system you want to analyze. And it can be a company, or it can be a family even, and then people start to talk, or what are these factors of influence? And very often, and I do a lot of teachings at universities, especially at the military university in Munich, and we found out, and these hard students, if you want to say so, these officers, but they, through this methodology, helping them in a neutral way, design, or it is about also designing a network, making a drawing, and they were really showing their fears, as especially why you mentioned that. And it was really clear that they are under high pressure, and they have to study, they have to do military work, and they are far away from their families, and they really have to work hard. And it was so these young guys, also like very high, very sporty guys. And so at the end, you could see that they had such a lot of fear and psychological constraints to where should they go, and then especially the trauma also of being in a war situation, in a possible war situation, and so on. And we could just show that, or in a kind of card, and just make a drawing, and then they could admit, yes, we are afraid, and yes, we drink because we are afraid. And this was, for example, a problem also, but because they are living there on that campus, and a lot of alcohol is used, but they see that they cannot reach their study goal, and they cannot reach and they are tired, and they are sad, and they want to be at home and miss the family. And we could work that out, but of course, you need a kind of clear setting. Also a clear setting, and people who want to do this work, or you cannot just do it as a kind of exercise, as it should have really a reason why you are doing that, and then a goal for the objective, and so on. Okay. Yes, so this was what I wanted to say.
Maybe I can jump
Thank
in
you for that. Thank you for that.
Because we are driving slow at the moment, and this is very central. It's going to the roots of what is cybernetics. It was psychiatrists, social pathology, people looking up to Macy conferences and Margaret Mead, looking into this human dilemmas. And then there was this technical people speaking about control and communication in animal and the machine. So it is very, very important that we make concrete what are we talking about. What do we mean by interdisciplinary? Is it transdisciplinary, so we know the other language and what other people mean? Or are we stuck in one glossary and one way of meaning? And the problem is always that the individual can speak maybe about his fears or his experience or the expectation on his shoulder, but how to do it in group and how to come to joint decision processes when very often the individual I and the family I and the group and the tribe and the national and the international I's are mixed. So we have a dilemma of categories and a dilemma of scales. So anyway, the Romans said the most important thing about any word is how you understand it. And this is very, very much true. A German person was his name, was calling it plastic words. We make the words meaning what we want, but it is not what the other people understand. And then the deep misunderstandings arise. So anyway, this is about how can we make a system and a model something which can dance together, like one way of representation and then the other way of representation, and how can we go beyond the need to agree to practical, they say viable now sometimes, solutions which are not just for 3 months, but lasting, and not just helping the majority push the minority or the odd people like the people without voice. Over.
You know, I really think there's sort of a fundamental that gets lost in all of that sauce. And Gabrielle, your share was perfect for illustrating. If somebody is in fear, there is no way for them to be in learning. So there is a dependency that unless somebody can get to a level of safety, to not be in fear, to enable on an experiential and emotional level, enable learning and listening and connection to happen, it's a stalemate. And all of the confabulations and all of the models and all of the glossaries and all of the wheel spinning around cures and fixes and methodologies and elaborate mappings and formulations for how to understand things on complex systems bases are for naught if Area A and the indigenous population of Area A, their existence is rooted in fear and terror. You just don't get to that unless you address the fear and terror. And I would actually go so far as to say our whole global cultural frame and system is rooted in fear and terror. It's rooted in scarcity. It's rooted in competition. So whether it's fear and terror literal on a battlefield or in a refugee population or in a place of famine and starvation or environmental disaster and collapse, or whether it's metaphorical fear and terror, Gabrielle's style, in a classroom of young men that are literally operating at such a level of fear and anxiety that, what they're supposed to be doing and how they're supposed to be performing and all that stuff. Experientially, there's no difference between, one and the other. Fear is fear. I'm not sure it's just a matter of creating the system formulation, Heiner, in your frame that encompasses everything and to pay lip service to encompassing everything, or whether you don't have to sort of prioritize and put the fear piece and the experiential piece first in order to get to all of that and have everybody present and connected and in attention and openness to experience what there is to experience in the moment. Amanda?
A couple of things. I don't know. I think one of the most important ingredients of such a system would be relaxation. In that such a sense that we can at least get to our senses. And I've been studying lately now how we got away from our senses in the first place. So I'm studying the actual age at the moment. There's something, you know, ringing there on that whole period of time. Something specific happened. I put a video on the chat in it. The first one is just 10 minutes, but it has a exquisite explanation on how we got to think so much mechanical as at the moment that we cannot even present our fear first, and we need to have a goal, you know, an operational goal first in order to express that we are also human. I think it should be different way around. We're first human. And I also experienced that in the year I worked with NewMap, that we got to relaxation, which was the biggest thing in the system there that was offered. And which meant that we had to go to embodiment and stripping down what we had to unlearn, basically, which is a huge gift for the rest of your entire life to go through such something with a group. And you cannot make undone. You're part of that experience. So this is part of my sharing. It is a whole transcendental evolution of world religions. And this might interest you, Heiner, also, that actually split off the information from our senses from thought. And I think the actual age is a bit of a huge amount of information. So I think it's more rooted into something very small, like the burning of the Library of Alexandria or something twisted. And so I'm really looking for a long time now, and I have a religious conflict about it with somebody who's really following the New Testament and Platonic thinking and thinks it's okay to cut down the senses. And I'm really following more the Aristotle Hebrew kind of body understanding. And I think it's also medical, by the way, the fact that we don't allow our whole body to be and to speak to our food, to ourselves, to who we are, is a huge quality of life, to say, I can just speak to myself and be okay. And yes, it has to be included in our systems that are ruling that out currently. So we have to just include our sensing and understand that we can supersede our normal sensing with super sensing, which is actually a very fast way of learning. But many people say that's not true, and we should have a methodology, and we should unlearn the sensing and go to university and then strip down all our understanding of who we actually are. And I thank God some people didn't do that. So that's one. And then, what was it? The thing that you cannot learn in fear. I think some people really look at the fear. They learn that some things in society are not true. They collide hugely through trauma, through the experience. Wait a minute, what is wrong with the matrix? And we can learn greatly from it. So it's not something that's excluded from learning, but it's a very hard trajectory. And I think we can respect the people doing so. So there's grounded and ungrounded fear, and there's grounded and ungrounded learning, and there's more nuance to it, maybe. Thank you.
Okay to go next?
Absolutely.
Yes. So yeah, I've been biting my tongue towards promoting not trying to stray the conversation. I think this is a good time though to raise some concerns about not putting all the eggs in one kind of the philosophical theological basket. So when you compare things, different things that people consider better, which could be their religion is better or the way there's sustainability, you get people who think differently and for different reasons. So I would like the idea of following through on what it is you mean from the abstract down to the concrete, a little bit, few more steps, so you don't end up just, you know, speaking in platitudes that, you know, at a general level fit, but as you go down to the ground and start to apply these principles, you start to see what two people mean by that goodness. Well, goodness to me isn't the same thing. So Doug spoke of that when he introduced the different shows that the GCC does, and that some people who would like to build concrete projects needed to have Saturday barn raising as a pressure valve. Well, that mildly triggered me as a indicator that Doug doesn't really understand what it is to think like me. And it's not so much that I need a place to build something, as I really more need to understand, and I can't do that without getting down to the base of something, or an example of how something plays out. So one of the big ones, and you know, Heiner was talking about it, I think Gabrielle was talking about it, is having a way to agree, or to come to this understanding, which are kind of a couple of my themes as well. They're hitting on people adapters, which gets into the emotional area. And Amanda's talking about, you know, fear as being an emotion that could be used as an indicator. So I see emotions as not only an indicator, but a vehicle or a type of way that somebody presents something. So if they're, you know, if you're angry, that's a really bad place to be to try to make important decisions. And if you're forced into that, it could, you know, so without, you know, that's quite obvious. And a lot of this stuff is obvious. Like, why are we still talking about these things? So what I would like is to take the idea of Sam and Doug and going through and the exercise of finding out what they each mean and try to understand their points of view. Not to say that one is right and one is wrong, but that there's a higher level of understanding here if you go a couple of nodes down the road and unpacking what it is you're trying to say. Because without doing that, they both sound all right, but they're contradictory. Now, I think that's a risky game, because as you get closer to survival and coexistence issues, then it's more clear cut what somebody's willing to defend and say, I'm entitled to this. So how do you come to this, you know, people adapter / cultural adapter / a place where you can speak sincerely without using politics and, you know, intimidation? Like, as soon as the conversation goes into that zone, you know, the screen might turn red in the background where, you know, this is no longer a safe zone. Somebody was just threatened, right? We can't, you know, okay. And then the other square goes red, and then everybody knows that, you know, war has broken out. Steiner's looking a little red there. I don't need to cast any thing there, but you know, it is like when Alex raised the question about, you know, the money interest, that's what's fueling it instead of the human interest that you know, we would all like to see take part of. So the number one thing I like to take offense of, or opposition to here, is the idea it's all of one solution. It's a multi-view. You can't just get rid of fossil fuels, but where you can replace them, it's a great idea. What's our plan to replace them? Or do somebody in the fossil fuel industry says, well, we're going to do this until we suck out the very last drop, and I've bought 7 yachts. Like, what are the motivations, and how do we understand this? And I think this is what Doug was saying when, do you introduce these people at the conference? You know, here is so-and-so oil executive who has done these particular things and has not done these particular things, and just ask him what he thinks about the word agreement and see what he says. You know, he's got a different definition of the word agreement. You know, so I think having these contexts boil down to real world examples is what would be important, instead of just having these models hang in the unfinished level where everybody can just criticize them and turn them more into stories, and then have a way to index them so you can say this story is very much similar to this story, which is similar to this story. They correlate. Why don't we talk about this and find some coexistence, which is, you know, the theme in barn raising. It's not an engineering project. I think it's a project in coexistence and understanding, which is the theme throughout all of the GCC. So I think it's having people look too much black and white, that we're not going to talk about old world systems. We're not going to talk about this in this. We're only going to talk about things that are centered from fear. You know, I think it has to be more interdisciplinary in the idea of what is it about the fear and how does that hook in? Just like the emotions are part of the people adapter, where the quest map is more of that, well, I have to do this to understand this, and this is somebody I can talk to. This is a paper I can produce, you know, all the mechanical robotic stuff. And then why you do it and why you care, that's where you get into the harder things and the block. So I would like to change the word blocking in my lens of this is more about understanding. So not why am I blocked, but how do I understand why I'm blocked? And, you know, how do I measure the progression of getting unblocked? So my unblocking is just that. How do we have the right tools to have serious conversations where you're not bullied, lied to, manipulated, and overpowered by people who I guess have entitlement for whatever reasons. You don't want to break down the world economy. You don't want to throw the world into anarchy. At least I don't. Maybe some people do. So, you know, how do you measure that disturbance line? We're going to disturb the system, but only experimentally. And we're not just going to try to take it all over in the next 2 weeks, but, you know, like the solar's coming. So, you know, it's sort of economically viable now. So that is the force that'll throw it out there, not violence. So I don't know how you bring understanding to the interdisciplinary aspect of things, but it's not easy to do. And I think visually is what I've been looking at, movies, stories, things like that. But to have those SDG blocks underneath to say, and by the way, it relates to these 5 SDG blocks. And these are the people who are doing this, and talk to this guy for this aspect of it, and, you know, cross-disciplinary reports. It's a complicated systems engineering problem that needs a human paint on it, not a profit-only paint. And
I don't think it is, Colin. When I talk about money,
go ahead.
I'm talking about a tool. Money's a tool. What I'm really talking about is the exchange of value between human beings, and the difficulties and the complications that are expressed often are not really there. They're illusions, because I know for a fact that the solutions to most of the problems are simple. That what's causing the complications is greed, human failings.
That's one. Greed is an aspect. Old school thinking is an aspect. You know, military complex is an aspect. Dependency on oil is an aspect. You know, people who are actually have a type of personality where they think, look, I'll just say it. Here comes the T word, Trump. You know, Trump is a new meme for a conservative mindset to beat up on people who would like to find a nicer way to do this. Like, you know, I don't think the people in this room are great Trump supporters. I could be wrong.
If you associate me with bullying or money, that's wrong too, because that's not why I'm here.
Language. Well, okay, I'm not trying to peg you into anything. I'm just saying that you have to be open so people have a place to speak spiritually about religion, even though that might not be my thing. You know, they have a right to be understood from their terms, not be just cut off, you know. So, you know, language is another perfect tool. Money's a perfect tool. It can be used for good or bad. Language is one of those things. So I'll let Amanda go, but I'm not criticizing any one thing, but looking to have a way to look at the context without getting confused and be productive.
And just a bit for the last sentence only, can we please stop fragmenting things and give things their own space in a box for a moment? That's so tier 1. I really have a problem with that. Our feelings are continuously present also when we think of systems. They're not gone for another corner of our life after 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the evening, or for Sunday. For that matter, we don't have any space left anymore because everything is being mechanized in such a way. 24/7 we are measured, we're controlled, monitored, surveilled. It's very high time that we start being human and that we at least land on the planet. And this is some of my posts last week were like, tier 1, actually, you're like pre-persona. You have not accepted that you're human yet. You have not accepted that all the parts of you are actually here on this planet. And those are the people making decisions about the future of humanity. Holy fuck. That's ridiculous. At least let's start being before we make any decision at all. And that's not say singularity wins anyway. We have to deal with whatever these weird technologies are fantasizing about. It's like having a fetish. Let them have their SM hobby in another space, please. For that, I make a box for an exception. Just to trigger you. I know you don't mean it like that, Colin. I'll stop now. I can't hear you.
Jazz, you raised your hand. Hold on, Colin. Jazz raised his hand too.
Yes, I did raise my hand. Really, it's a very minor thing, but it's a major thing. We live in a system that has evolved these feelings that we have. And if we have fear and anger, amongst other things, they're evolutionary tools. Why are we frightened of them? Why don't we use them? I've used them on here. That doesn't mean to say I'm not in control of what I'm using. I don't mean to belittle Colin. He's coming along very well. I seem to find that a lot of the time he starts doing these things, his dialogue, he goes around in concentric, decreasing circles, but it doesn't seem to land anywhere. It's not that complex, Colin. It is a system. I'm sure somebody can do a diagram or somewhere, or put a flow chart together. There is a blockage there. And in a word, you've mentioned it several times, so has Alex, greed. Greed is a cancer. Sometime or other, we're going to have to employ a surgeon. And I concur with a lot of stuff that Amanda's just said. And I do like listening to her voice. It's very, very calming. I'm complete. Hello, Gabrielle. It's very nice to have you here. If you want to say something, the floor is all yours now.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it's a pleasure also meeting you. I liked very much that sentence that you said, fear is also an evolutionary tool. Or did I really understand? Or you said that. I think that's very interesting. Or it is something, it is there. And of course, it was useful in the former times when people had to run away from some dangerous animal or to save their lives, to go on a tree because a lion was downstairs and wanted to eat him. And it's stress and fear, of course. Or they also indicators for us that something is wrong, probably. Yes, and let's say it is also, it's just what we are doing. It's just like helpful to deal with to come together with people and to bring them in a communication, and even, also, of course, it should not be mechanical. It is very often necessary to break also the wish to make it more mechanical. I had an interesting some years ago, interesting conversation with Hans-Peter Dürr. Maybe you know him. He's one of the alternative Nobel Prize, but he has passed, unfortunately, and he has worked with Werner Heisenberg before, and so he saw what I did, and he said, it is too mechanical. But let's say in another way, we have material to deal with. Also we have matter, to deal with, or I have something. I have it in my hand, and I have a house, and I have clothes, and I have parents and children, but it's good to know about the different levels. Also it's good to know. Yes, I thank you very much for that very highly interesting conversation. Thank you. Thank you.
Josh, welcome. Oh, with K9. Do you want to check in from North Country?
Sure, it's just raining, so I've been trying to get solar all morning. It's the rain just started, it broke for a second, and then the sun came out and went, yeah, solar, and then the rain came down again. So I was just thinking, I heard a comedian say that, you know, what are the stereotypes about white people? Because everyone stereotypes all different races. And he said one of the stereotypes is that white people smell like white dogs, wet dogs, excuse me. So I was just smelling the dog to see if it smelled like a white person. But anyway, that's my check-in today. I hope the unblocking is going well.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I'd just like to follow into the conversation that I almost had. It's definitely mind, body, spirit. There's no question. And I think I can kind of maybe sew together the pieces of what I'm saying with where Gabrielle, I think, might have been going with in the past, that fear has served us quite well. And Josh would know as well. I think he had the story about how our evolutionary minds are not geared for the exponential problems that we're facing. Our minds don't think exponentially. They think about tigers and fear, but they don't think about climate change. So it's a really difficult thing to get people to intuitively see this multi-system. And so not to belittle the body, the health, and not to belittle the spirit, which a lot of people concentrate on here in this meeting, but also the mind. And how are we going to understand? So that's the word I'm using for today. It's not just unblocking, but beyond that, it's understanding. And you can't understand by looking at just one SDG box. You can start a conversation, but you know, it says not only is it's like dominoes, it affects this box, and this box for that topic. And so the idea of women's rights, I think, ticks off a lot of very important boxes, and has been mentioned a few times. So that, you know, to not confuse what I'm trying to say with something. Yes, please go ahead, Gabriel.
Yeah, well, this is very interesting what you are saying about the SDG boxes, because in fact, I'm dealing with like making an effect system out of, together with Emil Underberg, who was also a part of our team at the pre-summit. And we are working, because we found out, or we also understood it, or Heiner, we understood that the SDG boxes, there is something which prevents people to understand what is happening there, or what they are, and I liked what you said, boxes. But indeed, this is a kind of boxes, and they seem to be closed. And what we are trying, in fact, is at the moment, like trying to visualize how they are interconnected, and because this is a big misunderstanding also, and it really prevents people from accepting them, because they feel, in the subconscious, they feel that they are separated, but they cannot be treated separated, and this is actually, I'm just like working on it, like finding out the interconnections, and maybe in a certain way making it more understandable. This is what I'm working on with Emil also, Heiner. We are trying to visualize that interconnected system of the SDGs. Yes, thank you. And very interesting. So I like that you mentioned, or that they are boxes. So this, in fact, it even looks like in these boxes they are square.
Yeah, and I think I made a map of a quest that somebody could follow through, so that they could know that right now I'm looking at the boxes, but that's not all my life is about. And if somebody comes and wants to talk to me in a shallow conversation like this, they won't be confused that that's what I'm all about. That's just a piece, and I did a little bit of a deep dive into that. But somebody coming to meet me in the middle of that deep dive might label me as saying, you know, well, that's what you're about. You're not respecting the spirit, or you're not respecting the body. So it's how to bring the body, mind, and spirit into each GCC call with understanding from where you're coming from, so that it's not disruptive to somebody else's thought flow, but it amplifies it in some way through understanding. Anyway,
okay, no, that's very good. I'm really, it would be nice when I'm a little bit further, then I could show you what we worked out, so you could discuss it if you like, if this is somehow helpful what we did.
I'm very glad Heiner brought you here because I think you fit in very well.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I think, Colin, what you pointed to in terms of those three legs of the stool being present, is of the essence of unblocking. Because each individual cognitively, experientially, and emotionally can be triggered in any one leg of the stool. And what's relevant to me is that it doesn't matter which leg of the stool they're triggered in. It matters to me that if they're triggered at all. Because when somebody is triggered, it immediately generates disconnection. And for that individual, a reallocation of resources inward facing. It's like, I just got a signal and I'm turning my attention inside. And for that, that's attention I am not directing externally. And those are channels that I am closing in terms of incoming. And so from a true sort of experiential, collaborative, team, collective connection place where everybody's presence, 100% attention, presence, and connection in the moment, in real time to the emergent of all of the individuals contributing. If one person all of a sudden checks out because of a trigger, 50% of their attention just got directed to internal stuff. The impact and effect and loss of that to the collective, to the larger group, is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And if multiple people are getting triggered in multiple ways at different times, and the whole thing is sort of doing that the underlying coherence of the energy flow and the level of generative potential of each individual and what they bring in terms of their gifts and superpowers and whatever to the group, and the overall potential, generative potential and contribution of the group as at large, is dramatically diminished. And we have the ability to solve all the problems that we're generating, we've created, and we're facing. But unless we can do it cohesively, it ain't going to happen. And the construct, by the way, the construct earlier, I think it was Amanda, but I'm not sure, I don't want to misattribute, but the concept of fear as a tool, I think, as a construct is a mistake to me.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because feelings, emotions, are not a reactivity mechanism and a signaling mechanism that's intellectual. It's experiential, it's emergent, and it's in the moment. It's connected to our animal being, our biological being. It's not connected to our brain. It's not an intellectual construct. And they've actually proven the heart reacts to incoming faster than the brain does. It senses stuff at a much faster rate than the brain. So that mechanism, whether rooted in survival or evolutionarily, rooted in fight or flight or whatever, the bottom line is that those signals on a being and feeling level, I would hope, inform how we relate to whatever the it is that's going on intellectually or whatever's going on incoming wise. That whether something is dangerous and threatening or whether it's safe and gives me warm and fuzzies. Whether it's love and abundance based or whether it's fear and scarcity rooted. as sort of the two source mediums from which most things fall. They fall in one bucket or the other. And I think relating to that signaling as a tool, I think it's relating to that signaling as something fundamental that is part of our sensing mechanism. And I think listening to that first, if that informed what we thought and what we did and how we actually behaved and conducted ourselves in relation to each other and in relation to the planet, we wouldn't have created the shitstorm that we're facing right now. And with that, I'm complete. And Jorg, you have your hand raised, and I know Amanda raised her hand, and Jazz has his hand raised.
I think Jazz first. Jaswinder?
I'll be very quick on this one. I disagree with most of what Doug said there. He's using the word trigger as to sort of mean something other than a recall, and it's inducing possibly some fear, which it may not be. I wasn't triggered by what Colin said. My mind was not wandering off topic. Colin's might have been wondering, and that's what I was probably pointing out to. Amanda was losing it as well. Young Gabrielle, her expression changed. And to say that fear is not tangible, it is. I'll take that to a level where the very rich people at this very moment in time are probably scared out of their tiny little brains because their way of life is being threatened as never ever before. Previously, when these sort of threats were manifested, as in the time of Napoleon and others, the rich tended to lose their heads, literally. So to say that these things are not related and that they're not intellectually affected is not quite accurate, young man. And a lot of times you make these connections and I tend to let them go. I'm hoping somebody else picks them up, and they don't. And I'm not triggered by this. I'm just pointing out that there are certain ways of looking at things which are not exactly the way you look at them. And this may be endemic of the particular way of your education system as opposed to my education system. I have no idea. And I'm not going to bring race into it either. It just is there. I'm mighty grateful for the time. Complete.
Let please muscle in, because we are reaching the airport and I have to evacuate. I want to thank you because it was a very great birthday present. But I also want to say, I think we should continue our open space workshop with Gabriele on systems and models to view the detail and the part. And then the last comment regarding fear.
Is fear prospective or imagined, expected infliction of suffering? And that leads it to a higher level. Thank you.
Thank you.
How is this suffering imminent? How does it manifest? Is it short term? Is it me in the cavern and there's a tiger? Or is it for us all?
We lost you, Heiner.
All to our conversation another time, I think. Find out. Good night and good luck.
Thank you. Have a good birthday.
Happy birthday, Heiner. We're also, I just want to point out, we're at the top of the hour. So we are coming to the end of another rousing unblocking session. And I invite, closing comments and thoughts. It can be continuation of the flow that's been. It can also be on the session itself and where we went and what we talked about.
I would love to still finish up. First of all, thinking and feeling don't have to be separate or fragmented. It's what many people experience, but some people are really good at monitoring and thinking at the same time, which is excluded in the traffic light model and is also a problem of our Western philosophy and of the whole actual age, actually. So I am not agreeing with you, Doc, that triggering is never good. And I'm coming to the point also that I see that experiential polarity actually can bring us somewhere. So the fact that I am engaged, for example, with somebody who is really triggered by fear and points me out that I missed something that I didn't look at, and bearing witness of that journey means that I'm able to, with that person, to transcend something and to come to an insight which humanity can benefit from. So yes, we can work through things, not by being numbed or taking all the violence out or saying it's irrelevant, but we can basically work through it, bear witness, and take action. And so that was my cherry on the cake for this part of the discussion. And I love the topic. So thank you for bringing it, Doug.
Gertrude?
Yeah, I start with a request that I say we, take shorter terms, like make a point and then leave it to the group again, because I get lost sometimes when the monologue goes on and then I don't, so to get that all together and to have the whole bridge from the beginning to the end, maybe it's my I think, but my request would be to take shorter terms and then come again. And so it's a vivid conversation and not a monologue. That's, yeah. So this goes to several people, this request. I thought, first of all, it's so great to see you again, Amanda. It's really nice to see you back and to see you anew, Gabriele, and all you others. One thing that Amanda brought up from coming from the being, I think that's a crucial part. And there was one expression, problem solving. So we solve the problems. Actually, problem solving leads to bigger problems. So once we created the car to solve the problem of pollution of horses on the street, so it's more about this bigger view, what's needed, what is a good way to go about, not to solve a problem which leads to a bigger one. So that is for me, yeah, I'm not problem solving anymore. This is done. More really going into what's needed or what would be a good outcome and what serves that outcome. I'm not stuck to the traffic light model, Amanda. That's not the point. It's just the way we work with the when I'm stuck in the red, in adrenaline and only that, and have no other option than the reactive one, then it's different than to work with what's so. If I have the opportunity to be in a state, in a meditative or whatever, and then to deal with the fear, and then it's different than to be run by the fear or to work with it and have a broader view and come from
Very
that
good. Yeah,
alpha
thank you.
state and then deal
It's
with
whole
it.
now.
So that is my point. It's not
Good.
fear as such is bad.
Good.
It's the way I deal with it.
Good.
That makes the difference. Yeah, and I think that in this state you were referring to, then we have access to, I don't know, 50 million different impulses from within and without. And if we are on this only intellectual thing, we only have about 12,000 impulses that we can deal with. So I strongly go to that direction and to say, coming from the being, from that state in which I can deal with what's so and have a lot better solutions than the only intellectual ones. Yeah, so that was my monologue, sorry. And I'm very interested in what you do, Gabriele. This is really, sounds really interesting.
Closing thoughts, anyone else? Harry?
Yeah, if I may, thanks all very much for gathering. I like the group being together, and I felt the richness of all these different worldviews kind of colliding and interacting. That was very nice. Today I had a lunch with my daughter, and then she said, "Harry, you're always either running or doing nothing. Can you just be more in the gray space in between?" And that kind of feels also like an interview I saw with Dave Gray here this week about liminal thinking. And that's the thing, okay, we all have our own view, our lens on the world, our belief system around us. So this is what it is, basically the projection of what I think that it is. And he invites, one of the suggestions he made, and I like it a lot and I'm testing it right now, is, okay, maybe you try another belief set today. So maybe I'll go totally woo-woo today and take it seriously. And what else can I then observe and experience? And just, yeah, I triggered some people. I saw that's why I use this example, because being triggered is also information, of course. There's a tension in you that apparently wants to respond and maybe takes away some free thinking space. So or feeling space or whatever. So I'm just basically being my own guinea pig this week and trying, from this perspective, everything is fine. And well, then I get different information. So that's why I'm testing. And so through that way of listening, I listened to all of you today. So I heard different things while you're all kind of the same people, except I can't speak for Gabriele, of course, so of course I see her the first time. She might be always the same, but from the others, I've seen parts of you appear. Thank you so much. I enjoyed it.
Yes, thanks, Harry. That's very interesting that you're doing an experiment. You're an artist and a real experimenter. This isn't the first time you've shared these different solutions. You're trying to get different contexts of being you. And I'd like to thank Gabrielle for coming. One of the things I'm trying to do more is to actually focus on what's more important to say than just, keeping the conversation going. Because it is difficult in this space for everybody to follow through on all the thought trails that happen. So it's a frustration. So what I do is I write my comments in the chat. And it's hard to listen and write at the same time. You have to be careful not to miss what people are saying. But I find this continuance of a conversation is what would be really valuable, like between Jazz and Doug on, you know, what Jazz is saying, because I think they may agree more than they disagree, but getting their worldviews adapted a bit more. So when Gertrude says she's not problem solving anymore, I think she's just found herself maybe in a zone of bigger problems that there's no known solutions, which are called wicked problems. And climate change is actually a super wicked problem, which has 4 extra properties. I won't belabor it here, but I put the link to super wicked problems in here, I think. Try it again. So yeah, I did. I would encourage Gabrielle as well to put like a little Facebook post in. I can't expect you to be ready to integrate with the Zoom chat on your first appearance, but wow, it was very nice to see you, and I think you have a lot to offer, and Heiner has channeled you here. That's a beautiful thing. So anyway, I'll just leave with that and say, you know, people, please try to write what it is you're saying in the chat and follow through with it. That's just a simple rule. Anyway, thank you.
Anyone else? Last chance, going once, going twice. Gabrielle?
So yes, thank you very much for to all of you. It was a big surprise for me because I had really no idea what it was about. So it was just more like, yes, greeting Heiner for his birthday or so. And I'm really very surprised, and I like that conversation a lot. And yes, a very good idea to write the comments into the chat. Yes, and I would indeed be very happy to be included some more time also in your conversation. Thank you very much to all of you. Thank you.
You said going once, going twice, Doug. Oh,
Yeah.
It was just something small. I thanked you for bringing the topic, but I didn't thank the topic. So I would like to thank Fear for being our guide and our teacher and for helping us engage with one another so that we can actually learn how to engage and to soothe and to comfort and to care and to bring peace. And so Fear is bringing us something. We totally forgot to thank Fear. Thank you, Fear.
That's pretty scary.
Well, I want to thank all of you for being here. This is a co-created phenomena and gift that comes together of its own, and I really appreciate the contribution of your time and energy with all the things competing that you could have done with it, that you brought it here. And I love this session. And Jazz, you and I will have it out. I'm open. That didn't fall on deaf ears. Hopefully I'll see all of you back. Next time around for me will be Thursday open. Have a great Sunday, Alex, Monday, where you are, and enjoy.